Knowing something is going to happen is very different from stopping it. Tadej Pogacar was the out-and-out favourite for the 118th Lombardia, the final monument of the season. Could he? Would he? And if so, how? Well, everyone suspected that the final big climb of the day, the Sormano, would be the launch pad for Tadej Pogacar, and the parcours suggested that the world champion would deliver. So it was for everybody else to try and stop him. Slightly altered course today of 255 kilometres in total. Added to that, over 5,000 metres of altitude gain. Destination Como. Starting off in Bergamo, most of the climbing in the first half of the race, and indeed the first test would come up reasonably early. Well, the year prior, it had taken 33 kilometres for a substantial breakaway to get away, and that only happened after a crash. Remco Evenepoel knew all about crashes at this race, having broken his pelvis in 2022, and so some ghosts to put to one side for him as well. It was cagey at the beginning, it's fair to say. Took a long while for the brave to go for it. Tobias Bayer from Alpecin stepped up, so did Giulio Massotto from Corotec, and indeed Connor Swift from Ineos Grenadiers, but they weren't allowed too much leash. Eddie Dunbar saw to that. Man who picked up 2 stage wins in La Vuelta wanted to be part of the action further down the road, and so it was that 12 riders found themselves up ahead. The lockdown was attempted by UE Team Emirates. Could they stop anyone else from bridging over? The answer was no. Suddenly we had 2 groups hoping to merge, and indeed both groups contained teammates. Abundance of riches for Bahrain victorious, already having Tiberi and Mohoric up the road. Damiano Caruso tried to bridge over as well. Ultimately, they formed a fighting force of 23 riders. Would this be too much to stop UAE Team Emirates controlling the day? Well, when the merge happened, suddenly it looked like the breakaway could go all the way, and the gap became a handsome one as well. How much would they need by the time we reached the final big climb of the day was anybody's guess, but assumptions were that 5 minutes might be enough. UE Team Emirates looked cool, calm and collected, and in fact Jan Christian and Finn Fischer-Black did much of the work for Tadej Pogacar. The world champion just refreshing himself through the day, and the big danger, of course, for UE Team Emirates doing all of this work was that other teams were getting a free ride, most notably Enric Mas and Movistar, tucked in and happy for the time being. Well, with over 160 kilometres of racing complete, 4.5 minutes was the gap, but it started to tumble. The climbs were having a toll. Late season, of course, and some tired legs and minds were on display. Not for UE Team Emirates, strongest here, and by the time we came to the mighty Sormano, the gap was down to just over a minute. Well, with the danger of UE Team Emirates just absorbing everybody, Groupama decided to get lively. Rudy Monard kicking on. Remy Rojas was also very, very lively within that group. But so were UE Team Emirates, and the gap just came down. Adam Yates now picking it up. Sivakov would be the last man standing for Tadej Pogacar. It was always predicted that he would go for the launch on the Sormano, and everyone knew it. So did Zanro Maurice. He thought, I'm not hanging around here. He'd bridge it up to join Axel Laurence from Alpecin up front, and now he found himself alone and up the road. Well, the breakaway disintegrated. This was what was called the peloton on the day, can you believe it? A very small group indeed. Some notables within it, but of course Tadej Pogacar kicking on, and indeed with just 2 remaining up front, Arensman and Maurice. It was time for Pogacar to launch. Well, the golden helmet of Remco Evenepoel looked around to see who else might be tempted to try and close the gap, and the answer was nobody. Tadej Pogacar went off from such a distance. Was it sustainable? Well, we've seen him do it so often before, most notably, of course, at the World Championships. Even the drinks. He said, no, I don't want to carry that over the top. I'll pick up more drinks a little bit later on. Leonard van Eetvelt then came up to join Evenepoel and Enric Mas, and the 3 of them had a kind of a spiteful relationship. Evenepoel was trying to get them to share the duties, but all the while up front, Tadej Pogacar kept stamping on the pedals, and indeed as he went up and over the top of the Sormano, he knew that a long descent with one little peak remaining would deliver. What's the gap, he said. He was told, and it was substantial. Evenepoel decided that he'd rather be alone. If you want a job doing, do it yourself. And he chased into the gap, but it constantly expanded. Van Velt was there with Mas, and Sivakov refound his legs and decided that he'd be battling for third place. Would it be 1 and 3 for UE Team Emirates? Evenepoel also asking what the gap was, and he didn't like the answer. The final lump then over the Battaglia. Just 7 kilometres from home, the crowd's out in force, and by the time that Tadej Pogacar came to the last couple of curves, he knew the day was his. He also knew that this would be 4 Lombardia in a row, something only achieved by Fausto Coppi, who has 5 to his name. Crossed the line to stop the clock before lifting up his bike in celebration. Tadej Pogacar in charge, as he has been for much of the season. His 25th win in 57 days of racing. Incredible. It's his era. Everybody knows it, including Remco Evenepoel. Double Olympic champion, world time trial champion as well, could not make inroads into Tadej Pogacar. Evenepoel getting emotional in a race that has injured him in the past. And there was a coming together on the descents. Giulio Ciccone making it joy for Italy by reaching the podium. Jon Izagirre crossing the line next in 4th place, with Sivakov just throwing at the line ahead of Mas. What a guy, what an era, and what a privilege to watch him in action. Tadej Pogacar in charge. 3 minutes and 16, the margin of victory ahead of Ciccone, Izagirre, Mas, Sivakov, Van Velt in 7th, Paulus, Gaudu and Maurice, with Remco Evenepoel that runner-up. This is a magical era. And he, Pogacar, the magician,